right now on Full Force Nature. Heavy rains in Los Angeles sweep a young boy into a flood channel, and the dramatic rescue is caught on tape.
He couldn't hang on.
Then, 2 window washers in Denver are taken for the ride of their lives when strong winds whip their platform around like a toy. Next, Hurricane Jean strikes the Florida coast, sending electrical workers scrambling when the system overloads. Then, unusually cold air in Oregon turns a small lake into a dangerous trap for man's best friend. And in Las Vegas, all bets are off when residents are surprised by a flash flood that runs through Sin City. Extreme weather, told by the people who survived.
The horrifying sight.
Right now, on Full Force Nature. Full Force Nature. When it strikes, it can leave us in awe. And sometimes it can take us away. Los Angeles receives only 15 inches of rain a year on average, but those few inches sometimes seem to fall all at once, creating a truly dangerous situation. Bob Turr is a helicopter pilot who reports for a local TV station. Shortly after a big storm begins drenching the city, Bob Turr hears an urgent call over police and fire radios. Someone has been swept into a flood channel and is floating downstream.
We heard a river rescue call. Somebody had spotted somebody in the water. Well, 9 out of 10 times, it's usually debris or it's maybe a mannequin, something like that. But we had a feeling that this was different.
Flying through heavy rain, hail, and lightning, Turr soon reaches the scene and spots the victim.
This is just incredible, folks.
The normally dry flood channel is now a rushing torrent with water more than 10 feet deep. Residents downstream of the victim rush to the river to try and lend aid.
Someone just threw a rope in the mist. He is going down the river at about 20 to 25 knots right now.
The water was raging, it was cold, and we were in the middle of thunderstorms and lightning hitting us, basically striking the ground within a few hundred yards from where we were.
There's another line. Oh, just a matter of inches. The man missed the line by a matter of inches. He's still out of control going down this river. It's a horrifying sight.
As the minutes pass, the situation looks more and more grim. A desperate rescue attempt from the air seems to be the only hope.
County fire helicopter trying to get the rescue person on the end of the hoist in position.
A paramedic at the end of a hoist, a helicopter flying at low level, and there's wires, and there's lightning, and there's heavy rain at times. So we have the recipe for disaster unfolding before us.
100 yards.
The helicopter pilot does an unbelievable job getting the rescue hoist into position.
40 yards, 30 feet, 20 feet, 10 feet, 5 feet. Hey, he got him! He's got him! Oh, he let go! The pararescue man has let go! He couldn't hang on!
We had a paramedic at the end of a rescue line trying to do his best, but he just didn't have the equipment or the training at the time to do what he needed to do.
With the situation being broadcast live throughout the LA area, even more residents gather at the side of the channel. Some eager to help, and others just unable to look away.
Bear with me, folks. This is very dramatic, dangerous, deadly situation right now.
This guy's on the ragged edge, nothing to hang on to, fully dressed, and he's losing body heat. He's not capable of rescuing himself. He's not capable of swimming to an edge. He's like a toy bobbing up and down in a raging river.
Somehow, the victim manages to stay afloat.
This person in the water, this victim, is doing a miraculous job of avoiding obstacles.
And then he lucked out. 2 flood control channels met at that point.
Shooting over a whitewater rapid, into the water, into the wash. He's now into the main channel of the Rio Hondo River. There's a bridge that spans over the river.
The water depth was lower, and because it was a much wider flood control basin channel, the water slowed way down.
He's slow down. He's going to intercept a line. It looks like he's going to run into a line, and be able to grab on. Oh, just tremendous, folks. He is reaching out for the line. He grabbed it. He's got it. He's got it. He's got the line. He's being pulled out of the water by, it looks like, firefighters and spectators. People, normal citizens helping out.
The victim is a young boy who is rushed to a local hospital. He's treated for hypothermia, but makes a full recovery.
So, just a spectacular end to a very emotional, hectic story.
It is a good lesson for emergency crews. Rescue teams since have perfected river rescue techniques with better training and equipment.
So there are some new tools available, which makes it easier, but still, you know, you have everything working against you, and sometimes the key element's luck.
High-rise window washing is a job that demands the courage and confidence of a big-top acrobat. But when nature's full force is released, these workers are vulnerable to the elements. A clear November day in downtown Denver is inundated with 40-mile-an-hour winds. 2 window washers on Denver's Plaza Tower are caught by surprise and thrown into the ride of their lives.
We could see the window washers hanging right across from the building. With their hands, they were signaling numbers 911 to the people inside the building to get help because they knew they were in trouble.
The strong winds become even more powerful as they are squeezed through the downtown area.
When the winds are coming in between those skyscrapers, it starts to make a tunneling effect, and that tunneling effect, which is called the Venturi effect, just speeds up the wind and it creates whirlwinds.
Carlos Garcia from Denver's high-angle rescue team is dispatched to the scene.
When we first got on scene, what amazed me was that I seen this 1,000-pound platform with a couple guys on it get thrown around like a matchstick, like a feather in the wind.
The wind sends the scaffolding out of control, shattering several windows on the building's face. Large shards of glass drop to the street, endangering onlookers and pedestrians below. With the situation growing more desperate, firefighters race into the building.
I remember getting out of the elevator and hearing a loud crash, and it almost felt like the building kind of shook, and we could see down the hallway that this scaffolding was now swinging wildly.
I saw that scaffolding spinning around in the middle of the street.
Caught in a never-ending death spiral, the 2 window washers hold tight and pray for a safe rescue.
You could see fear in their eyes, you know, and they wanted to get off. Basically, we had one shot to get them.
The scaffolding came crashing right where we were. That is when Carlos jumped up on the table and grabbed a hold of it.
When I first grabbed that scaffolding, I could just feel the power of the wind. It was tremendous.
The firefighters struggle to hold the scaffolding against the wind. The 2 window washers rush to climb off.
That look in their eye, I'll remember that always.
The men are shaken and bruised, but safe.
The fact that they both made it off the scaffolding is absolutely amazing. I think that there were lots of firefighters who were able to pull them off.
Mother Nature, when she's at her worst, there's very little that human beings can actually do.
When we come back with Full Force Nature, 2 dogs venture onto a newly frozen lake and become ensnarled in an icy trap. But first, heavy rain and winds tear apart a Florida electrical system, leaving tens of thousands without power. Welcome back to Full Force Nature. When hurricanes threaten coastal communities, residents know to evacuate, because what these storms bring on shore can be deadly. Friday, September 24th, routine afternoon traffic turns to gridlock as residents vacate Fort Pierce, Florida, hoping to avoid Jean, an incoming Category 2 hurricane. Evacuation is becoming an all too familiar drill. The area was battered only 3 weeks earlier by Francis, another Category 2 hurricane. Bud Boudreau of the Fort Pierce Utilities Authority is still recovering from that storm.
It was Labor Day weekend. It was pretty rough storm. As a result of Hurricane Francis, we lost power to all 27,000 of our electric customers. We had not had a major hurricane in Fort Pierce for 50 years. 10 days after we have everything restored, and lo and behold, here comes Hurricane Jean.
Residents immediately prepare for the incoming Category 2 hurricane. Meanwhile, workers at the Fort Pierce Utilities Authority brace for another hit to their newly repaired system.
It looked like it was going to the northeast out into the graveyard in the North Atlantic, but it did a complete circle and came right back and took almost the exact path as Hurricane Francis.
Jean is now heading straight for Florida, just 21 days after the last hurricane left. Bill Anderson is called into the control center to ride out the storm.
The feeling was disbelief that we could have another hurricane so quickly.
On Saturday, September 25th at 10 p.m., Jean's eye wall strikes the coast. The hurricane has now been upgraded to Category 3. Bud Boudreau immediately recognizes that the power of this storm is much greater than its predecessor. What's worse, this storm is moving onshore twice as fast.
The thing that was so much different was the intensity of Jean. The noise was deafening. Periodically would take a look outside. It was just absolutely horrible and scary.
Just before midnight, the hurricane makes landfall, delivering sheets of stinging rain and winds up to 120 miles an hour.
I've never seen anything like the force of the winds during Hurricane Jean. We had roof fans on top of the power plant for ventilation. Those roof fans completely ripped off and blew off the roof and landed 100 feet away. And these are very large fans, probably 400 or 500 pounds. And we knew we were in a storm then.
The hurricane's destructive force begins to wreak havoc on the city. Bud monitors the electrical system as the violent winds swing electric lines into one another, causing them to short out.
Sometimes it gets pretty spectacular. You can see fire running up and down the lines. It's like a huge fireworks display.
They watch as the Fort Pierce electrical system slowly loses all power. Transformers around the city begin to overload and shut down.
When that happens, you have a loud bang, lots of light flashing.
The whole sky was lit up. Those were 69,000 volts arc flashes, so they were very strong. Nobody could survive being within even 100 feet of those direct flashes.
By 2 p.m. the next day, Jean finally downgrades to a large tropical storm and moves north, leaving the area in shambles. Utility workers scramble to repair the system for the second time in a month.
We had lots of sand in the roads, we had trees down, we had poles down, wires down all over the place.
After braving a severe hurricane season, the local spirit remains positive.
I hear some people say they wouldn't want to live in Florida because of the threat of hurricanes. For me, I'll take hurricanes because at least we have a warning. We can prepare for them.
Coming up on Full Force Nature, thunderstorms send a wall of water through a Las Vegas neighborhood, and the house loses. But first, fire rescue teams venture onto thin ice to save a drowning dog. Fairview Lake is a picturesque body of water just outside Portland, Oregon. The mild coastal climate means the lake rarely freezes. But when it does, it catches residents by surprise.
Every couple of years, the lake will freeze over, but it's like snow here in Portland. It's rare enough that it's special when it happens, and you don't know how to deal with it.
On a chilly December day, Alan Johnson was shooting pictures of Canadian geese on the water.
I was watching them take off in waves, and it made really good video. So the camera was sitting there. The neighbor called and said that a dog had fallen through the ice.
Nibbler, a black Labrador, is trapped in the freezing waters of Fairview Lake after the thin ice underneath him has given way.
I was tempted very briefly to go out there and try to rescue this dog. But, you know, while the ice is thick along the edge, it's obviously thin enough for a dog to fall through, and the water's very, very cold. So we're watching Nibbler out there, and then Bitey shows up.
Bitey and Nibbler come from the same home, and with his canine friend literally on thin ice, the daring dog makes his own attempt at a rescue. But on the precarious ice, the task proves too tough for the pup.
Bitey manages to climb out and runs off. We thought, you know, the golden retriever is gone. It's got away. It's going to go get warm. But it came back again. And we, you know, oh my goodness, I guess that's loyalty.
Although Bitey is not able to save his pal, he is able to help guide the local fire department to the scene.
The call came in through 911, so we basically got all of our water rescue gear together, and we took both the engine and the water rescue vehicle.
Captain Jeff Ingram and his team have a plan of action firmly in tow, but a rescue under these conditions is not as easy as it seems.
I began pushing across the ice. It was fairly solid up until the point about 10 feet from the bank, and then it became a little less solid as I heard some cracking going on.
Inch by inch, Captain Ingram finally reaches Nibbler, and not a second too soon.
Nibbler would not have lasted much longer in the water. He was very cold, he was shivering, he was very compliant, meaning he wanted to get out there. His fur was crusted over with ice.
Despite the frosty fur and hypothermia, Nibbler can finally savor safe ground.
I wanted to clap, you know? It was, yay, they did it.
Coming up next, heavy rains turn the Nevada desert into a torrent of water with disastrous consequences. When we return with Full Force Nature. Welcome back to Full Force Nature. Las Vegas is known for having about 200 cloud-free days a year. But local meteorologist Kim Runk with the National Weather Service sees trouble on the horizon. A string of thunderstorms about 20 miles long and 10 miles wide is just hours away and closing in fast. Runk is concerned about flash flood conditions.
You always hope that the ingredients don't come together, particularly in a large population area. But by that morning, seeing explosive growth of thunderstorms in a line across the western part of the valley, we knew this was going to be a significant flash flood event.
Runk sends out a flash flood warning a full 7 hours before the rain starts falling. But as midday approaches, his worst fears are realized. In a span of 90 minutes, 2 to 3 inches of rain falls. Billions of gallons of water drench the Las Vegas desert.
Our number one priority in terms of our mission at the National Weather Service is to issue warnings that might lead to saving life and property. And so these are the days when you feel like what we do is significant, what we do is meaningful.
As the runoff rushes across the desert, roads are transformed into rivers. Homes literally fall apart, and people are trapped in the dangerous downpour.
It's a life and death situation. Most people don't realize it only takes 6 inches of water flowing about 10 miles an hour to knock a person off their feet. And as little as 2 feet will float most vehicles.
Las Vegas receives almost its average rainfall in just a few hours.
I've been in meteorology for over 25 years, and this is the most destructive flood-type event that I've ever witnessed. People just underestimate the power and the force of flash flooding and the timing that it takes to go from dry to a flowing torrent of water in the streets. And so they panic. They attempt to drive into it, or they attempt to escape it by walking across it, and that's what threatens their lives.
200 swiftwater rescues were performed by the Las Vegas and Clark County Fire Departments. There are tens of millions of dollars in property damage, and the entire area is declared a disaster zone. In the flood's wake, this booming region comes together like a small, tight-knit community.
There was a real spirit of rallying together to sort of help one another recover from this disaster.
Las Vegas is known as a place where just about anything is possible, including a flooded desert. That's all for this edition. Tune in next time for even more amazing encounters with weather on Full Force Nature. To be sure that you're prepared for the full force of nature, your local forecast is next, right here on the Weather Channel.